Greetings, grace, peace, and blessings. I am thinking about the whole digital ID thing and how it relates to uh, my recent experiences trying to get my um, debit card to work. I got a new debit card. I had this old one, I don't know, 10 years. And they, of course, did a new, renewal. Excuse me, pardon me. Um, and I used it as usual and it wasn't working on like all of the grocery stores. I mean, like I'd had to change to different aisle, go to a different cashier. A manager had to come, and for some reason it would work when somebody else would use it after I tried using it, 9 different ways. And it was frustrating. It's humiliating. But the store employees were like, "Yeah, our machines are old, so this happens." But still, like it made me feel uncomfortable. So and now we're hearing about the whole digital ID and biometric, whatever surveillance and whatnot. And the thing is, this is how Satan works. Satan says, "This is going to be better for you, Eve. You're going to be God, Eve." And what Satan doesn't tell you is you're going to know things that is not helpful for you, and you're going to sabotage yourself, and you're not going to be the prime creator. You're not going to be able to develop universes. You're not going to be able to create a universe, a cosmos, new life forms, with just your thoughts. As much as deranged New Agers think that they are creating the universe right now, they're not. They are deluded and desperate, and and I used to think that too. I used to be like, why can't I create things better? you know anyway, so Satan tells you it's going to be better for you, and because you're naive, because you're trusting, because you're not a despicable, deceptive, you know evil person, you're like, oh, okay, this person might be looking out for me, might have a good idea. Why not? And then we get into trouble. This is the same thing with infanticide. You need to kill the infant for your career. For because humans are a burden on the planet, and then all these mothers are haunted. I've met so many liberal women when I was a liberal woman, when I used to be pro infanticide. Um, like, women would confess to me, starting from high school, like friends, would talk about. I mean, it's not these liberal women dance on the graves of their babies, but they're not at peace with it. And if they are, it's diabolical. So Satan doesn't tell these mothers that they're going to be haunted because they murdered their baby in the most horrible way. That they had their baby torn limb from limb, and maybe even used in satanic ritual, used in injections and other medical experiments and other rituals. I mean, this is in a majority of the abortions that are apparently medically, whatever happens, like when the mother comes to have her baby, it's usually, like, I have read that hospitals, doctors tell the mother the baby died, but the baby lives, but then the baby is sold as a carcass, for organs and whatever, abortion trafficking, fetus trafficking, because you make more money. Like, that's the thing about hospitals. They're about profit. They're not about godly things helping you. I am always so surprised when people make it out of the hospital, and when they actually are better. Praise the Lord. Somehow, by a miracle, that person made it. Um, because as we saw with the scamdemic, hospitals were paid up to $350,000 for a executed um, a scamdemic infection caused situation. And the thing is, everything is technology now. Everything is on a database. So the only option for somebody who had a car accident, for somebody who had cancer, for somebody who had complications for diabetes, the only option that was available for somebody who jumped off a building, the only option to cause of death was the fake infection. So, of course, that boosted the fear mongering, the statistics. It was a complete fraud, and of course, it maintained the incentive for hospitals and nursing homes to kill their patients. I have read and YouTube. I can provide the documentation below that hospitals took out life insurance on the patients. An insurance company paid hospitals who executed their patients. And it's coming out now that hospitals didn't feed their patients. They failed to give their patients water. Um, I remember in the thick of things in 2020, spring of 2020, a nurse was weeping because these patients were left to die in a room. Like they were all just shoved in a room to die of dehydration, of lack of food. And of course, you have these dementia patients, these frail, elderly people that cannot defend themselves. Parents, family members were not allowed in the hospitals, so the hospitals and nursing homes could do what they want. They could do a mass genocide, and everybody thinks that this is good for the planet. Everybody thinks that this is good for everybody because then you're not having to take care of your elders. Everybody thinks that it's acceptable, it's reasonable because we have to pay give everything to the illegals or to the young alphabet people. I mean, this is facts. This is what happened, and nobody cares. That's the shocking thing, that we have serial killers running around in our hospitals and nursing homes. And organ trafficking has increased because standards are different. And of course, like when you execute people or when you schedule people for execution, you can actually, and no family is allowed to be there, so you can harvest organs. Organ harvesting has increased exponentially since the lockdowns because there's no regulations, there's no nothing, there's no. I mean, it's beyond diabolical. And but what's worse is everybody's just like, I'm just going about my day. Oh, I'm serving this serial killer her coffee. I'm serving this serial killer his meal. I'm working on the deck for this serial killer. I am on the cruise with this other serial killer because these serial killers made a lot of money for killing us. And they have no conscience. They were rewarded. So why not? Um, so, but I digress. So we're told the satanic thing is you're told that it's going to be convenient. Like this is how pedophiles work with little kids. Oh, you want this candy? Come into my car, do this, do that, and the kid thinks it's to their benefit. The kid thinks that it's um, has no idea. The thing is, we have no idea the outcomes of following strangers' suggestions. And so this digital ID thing, we're assuming, some people are like, oh, this is the mark of the beast, don't do it. But the thing is, with technology, as we see with the internet, there's glitches with the computer, there's glitches with the phone. The phone app paralyzes your phone because you've got a virus, bug, some problem with the phone, problem with connectivity, problem with the app itself. So all this technology is incredibly frustrating. Even with when it works, you got to get the password, but the password isn't showing up right. You have the right password, but for some reason the app isn't allowing you to use the password. So you try to change the password, but you can't change the password because you need the two-factor. Like, this is where we're at. and you have your phone bill, and you have your electric bill, and you have your rent, and or your mortgage, and all these things that you're paying for online, with all these like problems where you need an assistant. Okay, you're going to deal with the telephone company, and I need an assistant to deal with the medical insurance, and then that's there's so many unpleasant full-time jobs that this high-tech life where could demand of just a regular individual that's not a CEO of a major company, but it's like you're some company, and you're expected to do all this crazy stuff with the technology when it doesn't work, and it's all the liability is all on you. And even if the company is liable, they're not going to take responsibility because they're too big to fail, and it's all on you. And that's what I'm saying. Like, people who aren't afraid of the digital ID being the mark of the beast, the thing is, it's not going to work. You're going to scan your hand, and it's not even necessarily because you have a low credit score. It's because there's problems with technology. It's just how it is. Like, when I was a kid, you put your cassette into your tape deck or your Walkman, and it worked. Sometimes though, the tape would get a little wrinkled or whatever, and you'd have to fix it. You put your LP, your record, what's another word for it? But you put your record on the record player, and when it was brand new, it sounded perfect. But then, because when you slide it into the sleeve of the album cover, the record album disc would get a little scratched. So you'd start hearing like this scratch at a certain point, because it would, there'd be a scratch across the thing. So anyways, material objects are going to be glitchy. And the more tech you go, the worse that glitch is going to be, because we are so dependent on it. We're dependent on this tech for our bank or whatever. I'm going back to using checks and cash because lately with my new debit card, it hasn't worked. The first time it worked for like a month, and then it stopped working at like a bunch of different grocery stores. Then I got a second new one, and that one also started having problems. Um, so I'm like, okay, I'll do checks, and I'll do cash. So uh, you can't have faith in the technology. Like, uh, even if you're not into the whole mark of the beast thing, even if you're not worried about it, even if you gladly give up your privacy to the deep state, um, it's not like this digital ID thing and having your ID in your hand. It's not going to always work. It's like the internet will be down, the power will be out. There'll be some weird hacking thing that messes up the app in your body that won't work. Um, and that is how diabolical things work, because we are in a paranormal soup. We are in a paranormal supernatural realm where Satan is ruling temporarily. And so things are fallen, like things are messed up. And the more high tech you go, the worse it is. And that's why I think it's better to be more low tech. Have cash on hand, use a checkbook. Don't depend on plastic to pay for everything. Like, everybody's doing this like points thing and credit card, all this credit card juggling or whatever. And living on the credit card and having the credit card, help pay the rent, or, doing your overseas travel using points for hotels. And I mean, it seems like the people who do it enjoy gamifying, like getting those points, or they're actual accountants and math wizards, and God bless them and everything. But what is going to happen when um, the social control is like, and you have to support the totalitarian agenda and tell them that Trump is God, or Peter Thiel is God, or Noah Harari or Klaus Schwab or the World Economic Satanic Forum is God, or the UN is God, because eventually that's the 1984 premise. that we will all have to worship the Satan, basically. And these guys, I watch a lot of travel vlogs and different commentaries about current events since the scamdemic in 2020. And people wore masks. People didn't question things, or they pushed an accurate narrative that the scamdemic, that the infection was real, and it wasn't. It's never been isolated. The infection has never been isolated. There's been over 100 FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, of the CDC, and other countries have confirmed that there's no evidence of that scam infection, CV, and that PCR tests were never meant to diagnose infection. They were never meant to evaluate a virus. Uh, and that the guy, Kerry Mullis, who conveniently ducked out, supposedly passed away in 2019, that he's a fraud. He said, so there's this one clip that went viral in 2020, how it's not meant to be used to diagnose infection. But Kerry Mullis testified in court that the PCR test could do so, diagnose infection, and he put somebody in jail uh, using the PCR test for quote unquote AIDS, which also has never been isolated. Rabies has never been isolated. Like a lot of these fake infections have never been isolated because certain conditions make people ill. A lot of air pollution makes you ill. A lot of stress makes you ill. A lot of electromagnetic exposure makes you ill. And in spring of 2020, what type of electromagnetic exposure increased? All these 5G towers were installed. A lot of cruise ships installed 5G towers. And so people were having bad effects because of the 5G, but also everybody was spraying all these toxic sprays. Everybody was using all these toxic hand stuff. Like these antibiotic soaps, we heard when they first came out how bad they were. That triclosan it's an antibiotic, so it kills whatever your healthy flora is on your hands and in your sinuses, wherever that antibiotic stuff goes. You breathe it into your lungs. You have a biome in your sinuses. You have a biome in your lungs. So you have a garden in your lungs. You have a garden in your sinuses. You have a garden in your mouth, in your eyes, and your face. You have all this bacteria, healthy bacteria on your skin. And so you kill it all with that triclosan and whatever other hand sanitizers you lavished all over yourself and your children and your surfaces and whatnot. And it also got into the water supply, and like you use that stuff in when you go camping, and so then you're killing the natural bacteria in near the campsite. So there was all this toxic stuff people were doing, and then people were not being healthy because they stayed at home and they're glued to their phones and sitting over hunched, which is messing with your vagus nerve, which is messing with your posture, which makes you more tense. And then watching negative stuff on media, and then not interacting with friends, and then suffocating yourself and rebreathing the toxins. When you exhale, you're not just exhaling nothing. Your body is eliminating wastes. And so then when you cover yourself, you're re-exposing yourself to the waste that your body has worked so hard to exhale. And we breathe in. I mean, I think we breathe in and out, or we exhale 250,000 times a day. So for those people who wore masks day and night, so you were just rebreathing your toxins, and that increased a lot of dental issues that people had, because where was the staff supposed to go? Where were all the toxins supposed to go? It went on the mask, and people aren't changing out their masks every hour or half hour, and these masks were useless against the fake you know, demon molecule that everybody was pretending to be afraid of. The masks themselves, if you read, it said that it didn't prevent exposure because the mask fibers were, it's too big for the so-called demon, protein that everybody was afraid of. So so people, practice toxic behaviors and they get sick. And then people are incarcerated by psychopaths who then kill them and get the insurance money. So, I mean, so that's what happened. And then we learned how the ventilators, it sheared off the alveoli of people's lungs. And the thing is, so the people had no phlegm, they had no mucus from a legitimate, like infection. So you don't use a ventilator and you don't do that remdesivir, which it harms your kidneys, which then makes you more prone to death. So their lungs were targeted, their kidneys were targeted. A lot of these were vulnerable people or elderly people, or these were patients who were in the most vulnerable state, and they had nobody looking out for them. And the only profit for hospitals and nursing homes was to kill them or accelerate their execution. Accelerate their death. These are mercenary death camps and countries that do that. And 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 in red states were just as problematic. I moved to South Dakota because I had heard noises that Kristi Noem, at the time the governor in South Dakota in 2020, I thought she was, pro freedom. But when I got there, I learned from a local activist that Noem she was worse than Newsom, and she was totally into the lockdowns and gave the health department like just draconian powers. And I personally, when I was in South Dakota, I mean, people were masking, people were being fascists in a bad way. People were being abusive totalitarians. They just wanted you to obey. They weren't afraid of being sick. They just wanted you to be in their cult. And I was just so disappointed because I just expected more from South Dakota, but I found the same kind of weird conformist mentality in Montana. And, I just assumed Republican, conservative, Christian places would be better places, uh, but they're not. Um, and maybe this is a result of, maybe it's just always been this way, and as I'm growing as a adult, I'm seeing these things more. And so this is why I'm saying, folks, just because a new technology is coming out, it's not going to necessarily work. And also, you're probably going to be expected to pay out the nose for it to work and for your access to it. Um, because people are thinking, oh, well, this digital ID and the CBDC and blah, 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 okay, I don't care. I'm not gonna stand up for my rights or whatever. I'll just let whatever the government wants to do. But the thing is, these creatures, these demonic bipeds, they do not just take away your freedoms. They want to cause you suffering. They want you to pay for your imprisonment. They want you to pay for your suffering. They want you to pay for the loss of your soul. Okay? Like these folks are not just like, let me hurt you and leave you alone. Like let me just take what I want and leave you alone. These are just unthinkably diabolically evil people. And you just can't ignore it, and you can't accept it. If you just have any decency, if you have anybody you care about, um, like you can't just go along with it. Um, and I'm not saying go do a million push-ups. I'm not saying go write a million letters. I'm just saying say no at the grocery store, or say no, this isn't right, to your friend who's talking about how great it is. Okay, just like that is all that is needed. is like, I'm not saying go to jail. I'm not saying have a major confrontation. I'm just saying if you think this is wrong, you need to say this is wrong. Like you can say I'll do it because if you break my arm or put me in jail, okay, I don't want that to happen. But just want you to know this is wrong. And that's what we need to start to learn to do. Say this is wrong, you know? Okay, practice with me. Say it out loud. This is wrong. CBDC is wrong. Digital ID is wrong. Surveillance is wrong. Evil practices is wrong. Like, if and I understand if that's all you can do. That's pretty much all I can do. But we have to like just let other people know we know it's wrong because the past freaking 6 years, people have rarely ever said it was wrong. I mean, I am in a place where they're grooming kids at the library for sex change operations, and the only reason why anybody's up on that sex change operation thing is because it's this perverted agenda. And I talked to a bunch of churches, and nobody ever contacted me. I gave them my name, my phone number, my email address. I gave them copies of how the local library is suing the state of Arkansas to protect the library from liability for harms to children for this pet grooming stuff. Okay, so this library knows that it is doing something wrong, legally, lawfully wrong, and it got the ACLU to help them sue the state of Arkansas, this library, the Blair Library, to protect it because it is planning or has been harming children. And like, when I talked to like the 4 different pastors or whatever, like they thought I was kind of crazy because I was bringing this up, and I literally had the paperwork. But everybody just is, they just want to be comfortable, and maybe it made. I mean, the thing is, and this library is huge. There's only one library here in Northwest Arkansas, in Fayetteville, and I mean, so there's other libraries in different cities, but there's only one serving this fairly large city here in Fayetteville, and it's not used very much, like for how big and how like grand it is. And I think that's because people know. Um, I think people know there's something wrong here because I've been a library person all my life. New York, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, and there were people there all the time. And here, not so much. And it's like it's even more like catered to like children and teens than other places. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe the population has declined due to the machinations of hospitals and nursing homes and doctors giving poison pokes, and maybe that's why there's just fewer people at this library. Maybe there were more in the past. But when I lived in Oregon and California, New York, like libraries were packed. And this is a big library, and it just has kind of like mediocre attendance. But I digress. So, anyways, my point is that even if you're an apathetic, indifferent person, you could care less about your privacy. This digital ID thing, this getting the mark, to buy or sell, it's not even. They're not going to just give it to you and leave you alone. They want you to suffer, and they're going to make you pay, and it's going to cost you. Like it's not going to be convenient. They're going to sell it to you as convenient, and maybe it'll work the first month or the first year, but they'll make it. They'll give it to you, and then they take it away. Just like with computers. So when the first like 386 computer came out or whatever, If you had a problem, like you could go in and it would answer questions, like you would try to figure out like in the control panel or whatever. And like now, I've got a decent laptop, but it's not intuitive. There's not a lot of helpful suggestions. It's a lot. It's harder. It's harder to get it to work, and maybe it has more capacity for other things that I don't even use it for. But my point is that they make it nice at the beginning to lure you in, because that's what Satan is. Satan lures you in, and with what you don't know, and then he takes away what works, and you'll never get it back. You'll never get how things worked before, how well things worked well before, and you don't know it until like there's that phrase, you don't know like what you love until it's gone or something like that. So folks, it's not just like the evilness of the digital ID, being an unnecessary, unfair, unconstitutional, inhumane surveillance, and like the social credit score, you know, like torture of humanity. Like these things won't even work properly. Okay, it's just going to be more bureaucratic red tape, um, which will probably drive people to suicide, which is what these Satanists really love. They love to make things very difficult, unnecessarily frustrating, unnecessarily bureaucratic, incompetent people in important positions. That's what they do. And just to drive you crazy, just to really make you frustrated. And then you sound like a crazy person if you talk about it, or you sound like a bad person if you're talking about all this bad stuff. But these are facts. And so please consider this, and just at least speak up. At least say, this isn't a good idea. This isn't going to end well. I don't like this. I don't approve. I'm not going to maybe fight, but this isn't good. Because I think that will help a lot of more cowardly people than you. And we just need people to stop being a coward. We need people to stop being so selfish, or short-sighted, so materialistic, because you're not going to lose anything. Maybe somebody will be annoyed or something, or disappointed, but the only reason why people will be disappointed when you say this is wrong is is not that you're wrong, it's that they didn't say it first, that they didn't have the courage. They'll be disappointed in themselves and they'll take it out on you, but whatever. I mean, that's just people. So what do you guys think? What other similar things should we be aware of? Put it in the comments below, and thank you for watching. God bless.